All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Sebo?
Well, I've got my watching Amazon Prime notebook here, and we are going over episode 6. And it is just the one episode. My one word description of this episode was forgettable, but we do have a lot of nitpicking to do, and probably some things that might be consequential in later episodes
Mm-hmm.
coming up. I will say, just ahead of this, since our last episode was on this, Adolescence, I did watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So going into that episode, I had not watched it. Having watched it, there's not much that changes with what I would have said, but we could probably nitpick a little bit more closely. But I would guide people to the William Costello interviews and either the Modern Wisdom or the Trigonometry one or both, because he probably does a better job of it than I would, because that's what he
Yeah.
studies for a living.
Well,
Uh,
interestingly, I was going through my subscriptions and kind of catching up on things yesterday, and podcast of the Lotus Eaters talked about it because the UK government is using it as propaganda to push their
yeah, that was the stories I brought
policies.
up.
Yeah.
Those were the
And
stories I brought up from the
and
Daily
so that
Mail. Yeah.
and
And
they went
theoretically,
even
they paid for it through an NGO too.
Yeah,
So,
and they went even deeper into it because they're based in the UK.
mhm.
So they talked about it quite a bit, and they had a clip of um the prime minister who,
Starmer.
yeah, I was going to say something that maybe I shouldn't, because who knows how YouTube censors things. He is an apologist for broomers, and
Mm.
this is what is astounding to me, is that he's still in power after these revelations, that when he was, I don't know what, I can't remember what they're called, but I think at one point he was basically their equivalent of our attorney general, and he swept all this stuff under the rug. He broomed the brooming under the rug. And
Mm.
so he knew how bad this stuff was and covered up for it. And he's still doubling down with things like adolescence. And they added a clip of him accidentally calling it a documentary.
Yeah, we might have to have another Nietzsche episode because, again, one of the misunderstandings of Nietzsche and his slave morality was the use of virtue moral signaling
Mm-hmm.
in to be a coward, basically. And so yeah, we might have to do another deep Nietzsche dive at some point again with all of this.
Well, we didn't even get into one of the biggest things, I think, from Nietzsche is will to power. And
Mm.
that was grabbed by especially the Marxists crowd, all the different flavors of Marxists, and said, "Yeah, let that, we'll do that." And Nietzsche's, you know, Germany doesn't need its nuclear power anymore because he's spinning in his grave so fast that he can power the whole of Germany, because
He's
that's not what he meant.
The Nietzsche centrifuge
Yeah.
is going. Uh,
Well,
but
let's
back
get
to
to the
Wheel of
episode.
Time. Yeah, back to Wheel of Time. Speaking of
Um,
grabbing
we
power and propaganda, Amazon Studios doing its thing again, coming into this
yeah,
episode.
yep.
And well, good news, Jennifer Salke is has been axed in the employment sense, not in the real sense. She is out of there, so we might be seeing some changes going forward. And Bezos has actually made moves with Washington Post on trying to be more friendly to
Hmm.
the master morality, which is the other end of Nietzsche's range
Well,
of morality.
th-
And
that might be something we could talk about Wednesday, because we've kind of been last time we've kind of been drifting into what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, but turning it more towards the gender dynamic and the
mhm,
gender differences there. And I find it very interesting that Lucasfilm and Prime Video both were run by women with a particular hardcore ideology. And isn't it interesting that so many of their shows have characters that would seem to be self inserts of these studio heads? How
mm,
many Lucasfilm shows, Daisy Ridley in Star Wars, what's her face, Phoebe Waller-Bridge in Indiana Jones, and you look at it and go, is it just me, or is that someone who looks like a younger Kathleen Kennedy? Is it just me, or is Leandrin here in Wheel of Time and this stranger they were calling Galadriel in Rings of Power? Isn't it interesting that these are middle-aged blondes, much like Sulky, and they're power fantasies?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll give one on the male side. Uh, Adolescence, the
Mm,
father is portrayed by one of the show writers. And that's one of the things. Oh, well, you just swapped it with a young white boy because of political reasons. It's like, well, no, maybe he wanted to play the father and he wanted to make it realistic. So
mm.
there's also that element to it. And I will say, just watching that show, first of all, watching that show and then going back to Wheel of Time, the acting in Adolescence was so fantastic from top to bottom, left to right, up and down. It was I can't think of a single scene where I was like, "Oh, that one dropped the ball." To the lowliest person who was just the person checking him into jail. It was fantastic.
Mm.
I mean, he was you could you could sense that he was a police officer dealing with a 13-year-old boy in a time of distress. And I was like, wow, if this bit part gets such great act. I mean, it's like what you said about Vikings, better
Mm.
acting than the History Channel ever deserved, right? Because that's a fantastic show with Ragnar and King Alfred and all that.
Top to
It's
bottom,
yeah.
yeah, all the characters in that show. Speaking of characters, this was so something I've ranted about, complementary with Jordan and the books, which we have a comment on here I'll get to in a second, and contra the show and its awfulness, is that every scene should do something. It should have a purpose and a point. It should advance character and or plot. Well, there's another part of that that Paul Chato, whose YouTube channel is Call Me Chato, and you would actually, I don't know if I've mentioned him to you, but you would know him because he was part of the Canadian comedy troupe that did, you remember the Taekwon Leap boot to the head
Yes.
audio skit? One
Yes.
of one of the most hilarious audio skits I've ever listened to. Go look it up and laugh your butt off. He was part of that comedy troupe. So that's part of his background. He was also a studio executive for I don't remember how many years. He was in charge of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's comedy division, sitcom division, and he was the head executive for that. And so one of the things he points out that I really like is that in addition to that point about scenes, dialogue should be particular to the characters.
Hmm.
If you have dialogue that is so generic, you need to rewrite it. If I look at that and say, so as an example for what we're ranting about here, Wheel of Time, one of the things I pointed out when I was rewatched season one is how stupid it was at that fireside scene in episode 2 or 3 that Perrin was asking about, are we ever going to get to go back home?
Hmm.
Because in the book, that does make sense. That is a line that only Perrin would say because Perrin's the one who wants to go back home. Matt wants to go on adventure. Rand would like to go back home, but he's kind of the middle tier. He's kind of the middle of this three-legged stool. And he's the responsible one that would be like, well, yeah, I want to go home, but we can't
Hmm.
because, so that's their dynamic.
Well, so luckily we open with the Leandrin scene, which I initially hated. I initially hated until a moment. So, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we've ranted about this, so I'll briefly rehash some of these Leandrin scenes. My big question is why?
Mm-hmm.
Why flesh out a character just to flesh her out with screen time that is valuable in an 8 episode series to progress and a 14 book series,
Mm-hmm.
14,000 page book series. And I hated it. I hated it. I hated it until Ishi showed up. And then I was like, okay, so we actually needed her to become a dark friend here and why. because of damage done already. That's why that I titled the last episode, is it damage done or is it just teasing us, you know?
Hmm.
And there was damage done. They already played her son's storyline. So we needed something that was like, oh, that's why you're a dark friend. Because someone came and rescued you at a very young age. She was broomed, as you said it earlier. She was
Hmm.
broomed. She was groomed by I would say the word groomed. She was groomed by the person who married her, and she was groomed by excuse me, Ishi. She
Hmm.
was groomed by him, and he came in, and again, solid acting performance on his part.
Well,
And I'm not gonna bash the kids over the head, and it's mediocre at best. But she's
yeah.
probably what 12, 13 in that scene. Well, maybe she just looks younger, but
Yeah, the actress is probably late teens, but it is was probably cast because she looks very young,
yeah,
disturbingly young, which is the point. She's supposed to look disturbingly young because, oh, geez.
yeah.
But the
Okay, I got to pause this for a second. My
okay.
wife left with a pie in the oven, and I have to take the pie out of the oven. All right, the pie is saved, so we are back to Leandrin.
Well, not just Leandrin, but this is what is so infuriating about this series because every once in a while you will get something that is legitimately good. And the reason, besides the fact that just the actor is so good and it's, hey, he's back, we haven't seen him all season, it was reminiscent. It was a callback to that scene that we liked so much at the beginning of season two
Mm,
with Ishi and the little girl,
mm-hmm,
right? Where at first it's creepy and it's like, I don't want to watch this. Is he going to feed this little girl to the Trollocs? Because that's what the bad guys do. No, because Ishi is also the manipulator and the seducer. And
mm-hmm,
so him reprising that role here in this moment, here's the problem with it though. And this was my first, I mean, you might call it a nitpick, but to me it's not, which is that the cost of doing this though is there is no um limitation on Ishi's power or knowledge or ability. It's just how did he know about this person and how did he know to be here? And you have completely thrown out the window the idea that he was,
mm-hmm.
canonically within the source material, mostly trapped in the bore.
Yeah, well, and this is something that could have been rectified with a little bit further backstory. You could have had more dream material with Ishi,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that what we get from the books is Ishi is very intimately connected to the pattern in his place of stasis within the almost in the bore, but not in the bore, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to come out in these key moments because the pattern keeps spitting them out. And what we get from him as Ishi and then as Moradin later in the books is he's actually very privy to the inner workings of the pattern. That's how he ended up in Shanshan. That's how he ended up in all these places. And if Leandrin, because we've shrunk the world down for the series, if Leandrin is so pivotal, he would have been privy to that. But you don't get that sense. You just have him showing up again. No.
You said something there that made me go, wait a minute, and so I've got it playing, on mute here just to remind myself of the sequence of the scenes, and um, I think that actually is what they were trying to do, but it was too subtle and they didn't
Hmm.
execute it because it looks like she falls asleep and then Ishi shows up. So I think that actually was supposed to be in her dreams,
Hmm.
and they just didn't do a good job of
Yeah, and you could have even for
letting you
TV
pick that up.
purposes had him be, because we haven't established a whole lot of the dream world yet, had him be sensitive to people who were
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable to becoming
Mm-hmm.
a dark friend or coming to the dark. And you could have had that done through the dream world where he just has a sense for it, just like Perrin in the dream world can smell where somebody had
Well,
went.
and we kind of ranted about, I don't remember if this was last episode or previous. I think it was the last time because Egwene was starting her training. Is it wouldn't be that hard, and it would also be pretty cheap to show the dream. I don't remember if he had a term for it, But when you aren't in Teleron Riyadh, but when you are
Within the field of
floating
stars.
in the
Yeah,
field of
yeah,
stars
yeah.
that are dreams, you could have had Ishi floating there, and then you
Just
know,
feel like a miscolored beacon or something is
mm-hmm.
someone who is disturbed and needs and
And
is
this
vulnerable to his
the
wiles and
darkness of that dream draws him
Mhm.
because he is of the dark. So,
Now I will say this scene got ruined in the very next scene with Lanfear in the dream world with Leandrin because we just spent what 5 minutes of screen time establishing Leanne's revenge and hatefulness and being pulled into the dark based on this storyline. And then you ruin it by making her a basic villain bitch, and all she wants is the power and to be Amarillan. No, you had it. You had it. You just finished it. Okay, Ferris came in. He did his job. Leandrin's child actress did her job very well, and we have already established that part of it was the fact that she had a child young, and she is basically living beyond her own child, which is
mm-hmm,
something no mother ever
mm-hmm.
wants, right? So we have these real human emotional things that we can attach to a villain. And then you just make her a basic villain by saying, oh, she wanted to be Emerald.
Well, and
She's
then
dreaming
later,
of being in the throne.
later they elevate that though. I think they were trying to build, but the foundation is crap, to your
Mm-hmm.
point. Because remember later when she kills the uh whichever dark friend that is, the small person. I'm not allowed to use words that I want to use, but she says, I'm going to be one of the Forsaken. So they build off of that, but the foundation was crap. And this actually goes to my note on this scene, which is that they're trying to do the game of houses that is turned up to 11 that the Forsaken play with each other,
Mm-hmm.
because that is a major part of the books, of the source material, and of the Forsaken in their personalities, is that one of the reasons the light has a chance is because the dark is so busy fighting it against itself while it's trying to fight the light. And that's kind of what they're trying to do with Lanfear here, is show the machinations of, you've got Lanfear and you've got Ravine and you've got Samuel and what's Moghidian up to. The problem is, as I've ranted about before, a clever character is only as clever as the author, and these
Yeah.
authors are
Well,
morons.
I will amplify that thought with the fact that I just came across a news story today as I was, getting ready for this, and it was like, it may surprise you that Mohidian is the weakest of the Forsaken. And I'm like, you could have why are you relying on the press to tell the story for you?
Mm-hmm.
You could have amplified in this story, even if it was something as simple as during the meeting of the Forsaken being like, "Where's Moghedian? She's hiding in the shadows again." She's so weak that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not threatened or whatever. You just put that in there. But why are you? It's even worse to tell instead of show, to actually use the media to tell the story for you. And it
Yes. Well,
was like,
speaking of telling the story, the thought you gave me about Leandrin, and she's just, you know, basic bad guy, wants to be the Amarillan. And well, wait a minute, a cleverer way to do that scene, if you had a cleverer writer, would be, what is one of the core components of who Lanfear is that makes her so scary, which you were already setting up in this season, which is one of the things she says is a 3,000 year sleep with no dreams. Dreams belong to me. The dream world belongs to me. It's mine. I'm, that's part of her ego, is I am the greatest dream walker ever. I have the most power through dreams. Well, you could have just had a very simple line in there that would insinuate that this isn't Leandrin's dream, that Lanfear pulled her here
mhm.
to talk to her, because we know that can be done. We, those who read it, but also you showed it. Frickin' Egwene, who just started learning how to dream walk, was able to take Moraine into the dream world.
Yeah, no.
Oh, so what? Why can't Lanfear do even more?
Hmm.
And that would have also helped you later in this same episode when Egwene is talking with woman who should be Amos and Mullane about how to fight against Lanfear in the dream. And it's, well, one of the reasons it's so hard is because not only is she from the Age of Legends, not only is she a Forsaken, but she was probably the best of them in the
Hmm.
dream,
Yeah,
right?
and this is actually one place that bothered me. It was actually my next note is
Mm-hmm.
we just went from a very mm, mediocre attempt to say, "Oh, you do too much too fast," to Mullane and woman that should be Amos plotting with Egwene to try to fool Lanfear into a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it's like, oh gosh, we should still be just training here. We should just still be
Mm-hmm.
training, you know. And of course, it backfires because that was what the story needed to happen.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and we skipped over some scenes in Tanchico there because we don't care. And like you said, so much of this is forgettable because then one of the reasons this jumped out at me, the
Well,
thing that
okay, I'll say one thing about the scenes in Tenchico.
mm,
This episode, they did a better job with the Matt Min friendship. That was done a little better. It didn't
yeah.
seem so contrived, but
I I I wondered, are they trying to replicate what happens later with Vergidi and Matt? I think that may be some
oh, I
of
didn't even
their
think about that.
inspiration here. And are we
Oh.
even going to get Vergidi if we even get a fourth season, which with
Well,
Sulky gone, who
you
knows?
get hints of the menagerie in Tanchico too, because the lady
Mm-hmm.
spinning on the wheel, getting darts thrown at her or daggers thrown at her, that kind of stuff.
Elaine stepping up on the table and singing and suddenly deciding, I like the attention. Yeah,
Yeah,
there
instead
were
of
hints of the
tightrope, it
menagerie
was
there too.
singing, you know,
Hmm.
which I understand because this is something the show Lucifer did a lot, is they like to showcase the talents of the actors and actresses. And if Elaine has a great singing voice, the actress that plays Elaine,
Hmm.
then that's okay. That's fine because
Well,
it does
and
add to the
also
depth in that
you
way.
have to cut stuff. So if you're just going to cut the menagerie, that would be a way to show part of the characterization.
Hmm.
Which there were a couple of points here where I thought you could have Peter. Here's a perfect moment to Peter Jackson this and take a scene from here and insert it here because it would work and it would sound like Robert Jordan because it's his work.
Hmm.
Instead, what you get is this awful scene that is supposed to be Egwene training, and they can't help themselves. They can't help but girl boss too close to the sun.
Mm.
Is she straight up tells them, I lied to you twice. Now let's just move on with no repercussions. Besides just being dumb on its face, the problem with the storytelling here is who are these Aiel and why do we care? Because they are pointless and powerless.
Hmm.
What do they have to teach her if they can't even mentor her? If they can't be real mentors and say, no, no, go dig a hole and fill it back in. Go run
Hmm.
around the camp 7 times because you need to learn your lesson.
Well, and to add to that is the actress playing who should be Amos. It her delivery of her lines
Very stiff.
is very much like me trying to hit a chord and a melody at the same time in my seventh, eighth week of playing piano. You know, it is, I have to stop and like put my fingers in the right place and hit it at the same time and then go again. And that's how her lines come out.
Mm.
And I'm just like, wow. I mean, she was lauded as this, very experienced and very decorated actress. Did they rush her? Did they not give her time to learn her lines? What is the deal here? I know
Mm-hmm.
it's probably her second language, but at the same time, yeah, that's with a lot. I mean, Michelle Yao is from the same kind of ancestry as the person who plays should be Amos, and she delivers her lines just fine. She was the only halfway good part of that stupid Witcher backstory, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like do an extra cut, do an extra cut. You have the time, right? Oh, that came out clunky. Okay, so let me get it right. How much time did that take
Yeah.
for the budget they have, anyways?
Uh, the next scene, speaking of Lanfear, is should have helped build on this, and instead it's incredibly forgettable when it shouldn't be, because Rosamund Pike is actually a pretty good actress, but they have turned Moraine into such a girl boss that it's it also makes her very stiff. The scene with Lanfear and
Her
Moraine,
facial range has been zero.
yes,
It is
she's
distressed face with white in the eyes, is what it
mhm.
is. So it's like surprised and distressed at the same time.
And that should have been a powerful scene with the tension there between the two of them, and Moraine trying to be strong but knowing she's outmatched, especially here in the dream with Lanfear, and it was an utterly forgettable scene. Um, in fact, I have no notes on it because my next note is G toe. See, we know the source material.
Yeah, except it should have been I have toe. And wording matters here because it changes the meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Is okay. So, how many things can we find wrong just in this one scene? Is as I have been ranting about, okay, you may know the source material, you may have read it, but you didn't understand it. And I don't think you liked it very much because you seem to think that you are a lot smarter than RJ was and you know better how to tell this story.
And they could have fixed it there. They could have had Rand do exactly the same thing there, and Avienda correct them and say you
Yep.
because she did say you got it mostly right. She could have added a sentence right after that of you should have said I have toe instead of I my toe is yours or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not terrible considering you're a wetlander, but
Yeah. And that would have been a good instructional scene, which is what we would be going for, which is what I thought was going to happen right there. And it
Avienda was
didn't.
utterly pointless in that scene. Why is she even there?
And still the worst actress in the series. She is
Yeah.
equal to Perrin. And actually Perrin's getting better and she's not. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see that. Yeah.
She is season one Perrin.
Yeah, she is season one Perrin.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of Perrin, all right, this is where I'm going to start getting
It's the
into
best
the
part of the whole
ranting.
show so far. Are the
Okay.
Perrin scenes.
Episodes 1 through 5, I commented a couple of times of notice how we're saying almost nothing about the whole Two Rivers storyline here because it is just meh. It's fine. It's whatever.
But Matt is the best scenes though.
Exactly. Well, my kind of overall point was, in fact, to demonstrate what I thought of this, I thought I had an empty bottle that I was going to fill with water and just chug it as let me end it all now because this is what I thought of this episode. I didn't have an empty bottle though, and I was still tempted to just do it with the vodka bottle. But the reason I say that is, uh, I miss just fine because it gets it is the gif of that's a lot of shit from Jurassic Park. And when Goldblum is standing next to the giant, the human-sized pile of Triceratops crap. And this
Hey,
goes
by the
to,
way, on Jeff Goldblum, did you like my meme for the
yep.
yeah. I made
Well,
that one. I made that one. You can steal it. Anybody in the
so
audience?
we had a comment that I was holding on to get to this point because someone found us, and thank you, Carla, for commenting and watching our reread episodes, and comment if you're watching this awfulness too. But she commented from on one of our Memory of Light episodes from 8 months back. I just finished A Memory of Light. Pavara and Androl were a delight to read. I wasn't expecting a good romance in this series, which I'm curious what you mean by that because I think there were a lot of good romances.
I think okay. So this is the old Bill Clinton. You have to define what is right.
Mhm.
What is good as far as romance, and I think there were a lot of very complicated and very yeah. I think the word is complicated. Very complicated romances, and Andrel's and Pavaro's was a lot less complicated. It was actually very much puppy love.
Mm.
And so yeah, it was a good as far as good as in that's what you want it to be. whereas Rand and his three girls, or Fail and Perrin, which is something we kind of
That's what I
changed.
was about to get to.
Yeah, we kind of
Yeah.
changed our view on in this older man reading of it, was that might be the best overall romance in the whole series. Matt and Tuan was effed up in a lot of ways, right?
Hmm.
Matt and Tylan was effed up in the exact opposite direction, right? So Matt is all over the board with his romances. Matt and Melindra was probably the best Matt romance the whole series.
Hmm.
And it turns out that well, I don't know what they're going to do with Melindra here because they didn't do anything with her in this episode. But yeah, is she going to be a dark friend too? I don't know. Whatever, because spoiler alert, in the book, she's a dark friend. And I was just like, wow, that was actually, I cried for Matt when he killed her in the books,
Hmm.
And so if you're talking about good as far as, you're a little Twitter pated, as Bambi would say, and you're, feeling the feelings, and you got the honeymoon phase and all of that. Andrel and Pavara fit that. They fit the textbook. You know, they're going to have a fence with 2.5 kids and a dog, right? The other romances are all very complicated. So good is a definitional thing there.
Well, speaking of, Fail becomes annoying, especially to the fan base, especially as you say, the younger fan base was more complicated as we get to be older, grumpier men. But um, in the beginning, it actually is a really good young couple. They are um they are the two from high school that
Yeah.
were always passionate,
Well, their
one way or the
difficulties,
other.
yeah, their difficulties in the beginning are culturally based on where they're from.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
Yeah, and so it actually becomes more of a difficulty when you have other
Hmm.
things like her being kidnapped or Barrelane or all of these other things that come in that was basically the evil of the world coming at them all at once. But in the beginning, it was more of a high school romance, but she moved in from New York and he's from Texas, that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
And the reason I bring that up is because the next scene is Perrin being brought in wounded, um, and Fail plays this. I don't know how much of this is her, how much of this is the director, but this scene makes no sense because Fail plays this very emotionally, like she would in the book when he was hurt. She was very concerned, very attached, but they were already a couple by this point in the book. We understood why she was so concerned
Okay,
because
so
she
there was a lot of things
genuinely
fast
cared about
tracked.
this person.
There were a lot of things fast tracked, but I
Mm-hmm.
will defend this one
Mm-hmm.
because first of all, you have to fast track it because of the way it was written by the people outside of your control if you're the director. But also look at the way she reacted when she meets Perrin in book 3. It You don't uproot everything you've been working on to go with these people, especially when the warder in the group says, "Yeah, if you do anything out of line, I will kill you." If there wasn't already something like that there, and we're gonna go to this is where I'll get us canceled in this thought, and I think people understand it under the surface, but the writers would never admit to it. This is a very feminine trait when it comes to falling in love. Is there is a very quick hot burn right in the beginning, especially if all the stars align. And I thought they actually portrayed that okay. I wouldn't say it was good, but I thought they portrayed it okay. And given the circumstances, it was okay there, based on the fact that we skipped book 3.
The
I would rather them have done book 3. Let me get that clear and in the, but because the decision was made to skip book 3,
mm-hmm.
the individual decisions in this scene or in these moments were actually okay. And you can actually see it. Women go all in. Look at the crazy girl that is all of a sudden possessive and jealous over the guy they just met last night. This happens in real life all
See,
the time.
I think this scene is indefensible for a number of reasons, and this may be my
I
main
think it's
rant here,
indefensible
so I'm going
because
to
they
do it
skipped
here.
book 3. That's
Well,
the only reason I think it's indefensible.
but they could have put in some of the elements of book three. Remember, I don't remember when I said this, but one of my thoughts when we kind of briefly mentioned what was going on in the Two Rivers is I was wondering if we were going to get the blacksmithing scene that I love so much from The Dragon Reborn, but we're going to do it here.
We got
See,
it in Egwene's dream.
there is a scene missing. It's like the editor screwed up and accidentally left an important scene on the cutting room floor because there's a scene missing before this scene. To your point about, okay, so what we see with Fail and Perrin in the brief time we see them in episodes 1 through 5, they do a decent job, and especially the actress does a decent job of showing you that this is someone she's interested in. This is someone she finds intriguing. This is someone she might be attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
But we never get that, oh, yeah, I'm into you scene. And silly me for thinking that they might actually do a good here and transport that blacksmithing scene here
You
to
you
flesh this out.
you know this is something the writers could never do, but you know what would have fixed this, and you agree or disagree with me after I say spell it out. In the scene where they're fighting the White Cloaks, if she's in trouble and he's injured, but he saves her and falls down next to her and is just like, "Are you okay?" And she like just like brushes his hair or something, in that moment before they get up.
Mm-hmm.
Had he saved her in that last moment, even though he was desperately injured and then collapses next to her and she has to carry him out, that would have solved that right there because
Mm-hmm.
you would have had that moment of connection and he saved her life, which is something women look for in men, a protective force. And now she has to save his life. And then fast forward to the scene we're talking about where she's dragging him in.
That would have been a all right. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because the end of the episode with Parrot and Fail really pissed me off.
Okay, yeah, we'll,
Um,
we'll we'll cross that bridge when we get there because
but
I got some
that
issues
is
with
a
that.
that is a better point because that also would have been a redemptive moment for Perrin, whose big hang up here is I accidentally killed my wife. Oopsie.
Mm-hmm. And now I accidentally saved somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would have kind of brought things full circle and made what happens at the end actually make more sense. But we'll put a pin in that. Let me finish my rant though, because this episode for me was not only the worst episode in the whole series so far, it
Mm.
was one of the worst episodes of television I've ever seen. And I watched the live action Cowboy Bebop. Even though I knew we weren't going to talk about it, I still watched it to torture myself because I love the anime so much. And this was worse for a number of reasons
See,
within its own world.
you never watched the prequel to Witcher. That
I watched enough of it to know that it was terrible.
yeah.
Um, uh, Speaking of, what does anyone out there comment if you have an idea of why stuff looks so cheap? Because that was one of my rants about Witcher, a Blood Origin. Why does this look so cheap?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you see that with
Tanchico. A lot of Tanchico. It
a
looks
lot of
cheap.
the
Yeah.
Tanchico, a lot of why do all the Aiel spears look so rubbery, plasticky, fakey? And that was another problem with Witcher Blood Origin too. Is why does this look so cheap? Why does this, you know, effects are getting better and yet things are looking worse. So if anyone has an idea on that, anyway, but set aside the within its own
Yeah,
world
I
here.
wonder if there's a phenomenon here where you're confusing cheap with uncanny valley. Like
Mm.
effects are getting better, but they're sitting right on that edge where it disturbs you mentally.
Well, things like the Aiel spears, those
It
are
does look
physical
like the thing you could have
props.
bought at what was that museum we used to go to on field trips when we were a kid in San Antonio?
The
Uh,
Texas Heritage Museum
yeah.
in
That looks
downtown
like
San
something you
Antonio.
could have
Yeah,
bought there. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, but the other thing that makes this episode in particular so terrible is because there's an argument to be made, especially in the Dragon Reborn, but even in the Shadow Rising, that Perrin is the main character. especially in the Dragon Reborn, because Rand kind of disappears. But even in the Shadow Rising, not just how much page time he takes up in those two books, but how important his scenes are, both within the book and in the greater story.
Mm-hmm.
That in book 3 and 4, which this season is supposed to be combining, Perrin's the main character. And not only have we not seen him very much, we have got almost no character development from him
My only
when we have
pushback
seen him.
from a book standpoint is I think they did give equal measure to Parent and Matt because we have Matt's coming of age in book three, where
Yeah.
he becomes the hero he is, and then we have him following up and becoming the badass that he is, not just the
Mm-hmm.
hero in book four. So I think Rand took a
But
complete
I would
backseat
say
in book
that
three.
Matt's scenes in book 3 and 4 are set up for how important he will become in books 5, 6, and 7, especially, but then beyond is set up. Perrin's is almost, and we talked about this when we talked
Well,
about the
Perrin's is set
slog.
up for awesomeness and became the slog, is what it happened in the
Exactly,
books.
is one
Yeah.
of the problems with book 3 and 4 for Perrin is that is that I mean, the end of the Shadow Rising is the climax of any other fantasy series, and yet we're just in book 4 of what would ultimately become a 14 book series, and that was one of Perrin's problems. But anyway, this to me is another element of, you may have read the source material, but you didn't understand it
Hmm.
because you clearly dropped the ball big time with Perrin here.
I still am
Um,
not hating on the Perrin Fael scenes here. But again, I'm thinking of it from a meta level. If you skip book three, I think this might be one of the better ways to pull it off.
Okay, well, then let me switch to one of my other rants, which is going to become more evident later with when we go back to Tanchico, especially here. Well, yeah, let me move
Yeah,
along
yeah, we're gonna go back
with
to Tanchico. I would just say not only is it one of the better ways to pull it off if you skip book three. Again, we're making that the given here. But also, I think you can actually feel a little bit of a real connection between the actress and actor in those scenes. And that is something lacking in a lot of other, especially Moiraine scenes. You don't feel any real connection. You just see lines with a desperate face. And now Rand and Lanfear scenes better than Perrin and Fael scenes, but you actually do feel a little bit of it. I hate some of the things they did with the
mhm.
decision making, but I do feel it. I think it's an okay portrayal here. So I don't hate it
Kudos
as much as you do.
to the actress, because not only is she good, but as much as we have ranted about Marcus Rutherford, especially in season 1, um, what was her name? Isabella, uh, Italian last name I can't pronounce. She's so good, she makes him better.
Hmm.
The problem is there's no foundation for that in the scenes. It's all just the chemistry between the two of them in the moment, which is what is wrong with so much of this. Is it's all just a bunch of moments. So let's go back to Tanchico. Tom's finally back. Or as
Which
I,
was my prediction from last episode. Tom will
uh-huh,
be there in Tenchico the next episode, is what I
yep.
said. Yeah.
Or as my note says, Tom, or someone who got drunk playing Red Dead and mixed up their cosplay. So we've already ranted about how we have a problem with how they portray Tom, but
Well, especially
what?
here, this scene was even worse than the other ones because first of all, he tells them to leave when he's fighting the Murdral. And
Why
here
is
he
he so
blames
pissed
Matt.
off?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
here he blames Matt for leaving him. And also he's motivated to follow him by the money bag. Yeah.
Again, you read it, you didn't understand it, because all it would have taken. All right, so we have to condense and fast forward. So we're not going to do Tom in Carheen and Tom in Tar Valon like he actually was. Well, you can still take that idea and say, dude, I came to literally the other side of the world, because if you look at the map, Tanchico is about as far from Tar Valon as you can get. I want nothing to do with Aes Sedai and politics and what's going on. There are people proclaiming themselves the Dragon Reborn, and there's Aes Sedai all over the place. I came here to get away from all of that.
Hmm.
That's all it would have taken.
Well, and
And it would have made sense because here's the problem with Tom being there. It's not that, oh, well, that's not how it is in the books. No, the problem is this is one of a series of contrivances and coincidences. The whole Tanchico plot line in this episode is nothing but a series of contrivances and coincidences. It's just here's a scene, here's a thing, here's a
well, and they forget
nothing
their own
flows.
scenes. They forget their
Nothing
own scenes
flows. Yes.
because Tom says to Matt in that scene where he meets up with these, you and your redheaded friend there, I have nothing to do with, I want nothing to do with you. She had already exposed her face to the probably Val and Luca wannabe guy
Mm-hmm.
there. So Tom would have seen it, but then he gets close to her in the next scene and says, "Oh, I recognize you because I see your face." No, he would have known who she was already. So
Mm-hmm.
you're already messing up your own scenes by with the contrivance. So we needed him to recognize her as Elaine, but at the same time he should have recognized her as Elaine because she already exposed her face before he saw
That
Matt. Yeah.
and again, back to you read the source material, didn't understand it. That is what motivated Tom at the beginning of the Shadow Rising. So why didn't you use that to motivate him here? Of I want to get away from that, and then he notices. Then are you with her? And Matt could have a snarky Matt line about, oh, you like him young, huh? And then Tom could get serious and watch your mouth because I know who that is because I spent some
I'm
time in the
basically her
court.
father. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can leave some mystery there because there's some mystery there for a long time about how exactly what was his relationship, what is going on with Tom here. You could leave some mystery there, but clearly he's motivated for you idiot. She's in trouble and she doesn't know how much trouble she's in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you could even have, I mean, in that scene, why not have somebody actually coming after her there where Tom recognizes it before Matt and Elaine do?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, that would have been nice. You know,
Why did it
a
take
cut
someone
purse or something.
literally putting a knife to Elaine's throat before Tom did anything?
Hmm.
You know, it, if you were actually clever writers, you would have had it more subtle and had, like the boss guy, the kind of twink guy there who pulled the knife, he's making eyes at his minions and they're getting
Hmm.
closer and Tom
And
sees
and
this
even you have the
and
scene with Tom and the music. You can have him looking around while he's playing, and Elaine completely oblivious while she's singing. You could have displayed the talent you want to display while
mm-hmm.
Tom is acting like an actor should do and scanning the room and actually eyeballing the people involved and then intervening before it became a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have forgiven that whole make Tom the guitar player from the lobby in Parker Hall as we, you know,
um then they do it again with what started out as an actually a decent scene with Min and Nynaeve. And I actually liked Min's comment of you're scowling and Nynaeve, that's just my face.
yeah, she had
Because
RBF.
yeah,
She had
that is
RBF.
that is who she is. And she doesn't care. That's just my face and I'm not changing it. I'm, whatever. Cause that's Nynaeve. Um, that was a good one. And then they completely ruin it with, oh, look, another contrivance and a coincidence. Someone just happens to walk in that Min just happens to see a vision and, oh, I know where they are now.
Well, and this is a problem with scale. So this is the scale in the show is just so vague, but it
Mm-hmm.
makes it smaller. So what
Mm-hmm.
they did in this scene was you're basically like in a village no bigger than Eamon's Field. Everybody comes into these places and you just see basically two places plus a street that's busy. Whereas the scale of what Tanchico should be is you're in a major US city, okay,
Mm-hmm.
where you could be at a bar on the south side of San Antonio and you would have no clue what's happening in, Stone Oak on the north side because it's 15 miles
Yeah.
away. which is, an hour in city traffic. So yeah, Tanshiko is a massive place, but they scaled it to these two bars.
All you would have needed was, again, just a couple of lines there of Elaine and Matt are over here for some reason. Have them have a line about why they're there looking for information and why Min and Nynaeve are over here somewhere else. And just a line about, man, this is the fourth tavern we've been to. How many more are we going to go to? And Min, hey, this is where the servants of the well-to-do come to unwind, and that's who will know what's going on.
Or take away the hamstring you had with Matt having to confront Tom and have Matt and Min together and Matt rolling the dice to see if they go in the tavern, like he did in book 3, and his luck
Yeah,
coming through for them.
there you
But
go.
you didn't set that up. You
Nope.
didn't
You
set up that
That's a good
if
point.
he does random things, he does better.
You have set up the memories, and I hadn't even thought about, you haven't even set up the luck. You have had a couple of comments about him playing cards and playing dice. You've never shown it. I just
Yeah,
Damn
well,
it,
and
I just realized that.
you could even have had Min and Nynaeve in that scene together, because you could have had all four of them, and okay, we need to split up. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? And Matt says, "Oh, he flips a coin or something. Go in that one."
Hmm.
And flips another coin. Oh, we're going to go in that one. That could have been even set up using Matt's luck.
And hey, Matt, that's stupid. Trust me, my luck never fails.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Usually,
yeah. Usually, yeah.
but and then they compound the stupidity with her just blurting out, I see the pattern.
Mhm.
Congratulations. You're going to marry this person. And no one bats an eye. No one says, witch, burner, weigh her to see if she weighs as much as a duck.
Yeah.
The
Who are
hell?
you so learned in the ways of science?
Um,
What else floats?
oh
Small
gosh.
rocks?
I got to go watch that now to cleanse my palate. Then we get this really weird scene with Malgideon being gross and creepy.
Yeah,
Um,
I like, even the second time I watched through it, I rewound that to be like, what the hell is going on here? Are they trying to set up that there are rituals to what the power can do, or what?
she just gross and creepy. I don't know what they were trying to
Eating
do
their
there, but
panties and
yeah,
fitting it
s-
into
it,
cakes, and yeah.
spitting out, yeah, the food thing, was ugh. It was really weird and gross, and it's like, I don't know if they're just trying to set up, yeah, she's evil. This is, there are different flavors of the dark, and this is hers. But I don't know what exactly they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I think this is part of the pulling in audiences that don't understand the books, is because she did a lot of manipulative stuff with the power and with dreams. But if you are coming in fresh, having never read the books, well, you would think of this as like voodoo magic, right?
so then we get another training scene with Egwene and the wise ones. And this connects to what we talked about last time, actually, because one of the quotes you read, I don't remember, who it was from, but one of the things he brought up was shop class and team sports and why
Mm.
that's important.
Yeah,
Well,
Alexander Datesike. Yeah.
so this may seem unconnected, but here's how it's connected. Males generally are not attracted to female stories. Why? Well, because men inherently, and especially boys, we want to strive and work and overcome. One of the problems with female centric stories, especially when they are written by and for females, as opposed to, say, I give credit where it's due because we crap on them all the time. Sanderson's One of Sanderson's main story arcs, the one of the ones that I've read and only vaguely remember, the main character is a young woman, and it's written very well, but he doesn't write it like a female story. What do I mean by that? She has to work hard and overcome a lot. Contrast that with Captain Marvel as one of the prime examples of female storytelling and why it sucks and why it's not attractive to men. Because in a lot of written by and for women, you're already good enough. You just have to realize it.
Yep.
That is the female power fantasy, is you just have to recognize how awesome you are, and then everyone else around you will recognize how awesome you are, and you will be able to do the awesome things. Why is that the problem here in this scene? Because what the wise ones are teaching Egwene is you just have to believe in yourself.
Hmm.
No, 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 no. And you kind of sort of set this up a little bit in season 2 when we see Lanfear in the world of dreams with Rand, is that no, 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 it's not just about your will, it's your will versus their will. Who
Hmm.
has the stronger will to impose their reality in this world where reality is malleable?
Yeah, well, not only that is there's two parts with the original Jordan writings is uh there was a very Buddhist undertone to the world of dreams where it was
Mm-hmm.
this thought has come forward, but I am going to make it and let it pass because it is not the thought that is what represents my reality here in the world of dreams. It wasn't a we see this in trying to remember which book it was, five, where Sheriam and all the Saladar ladies
Oh,
are
were they
in the
pulled into
cook
the
pots.
nightmare?
Yeah, because if you
Yeah.
fight it directly, you are acknowledging it exists. Whereas the world of dreams function in a way of, oh, that thing is there, but it has to pass. And so that's a very Buddhist breath technique, mindful meditation view of what the dream should be. So there is that control there. But on the flip side, when we look at cognitive psych and actually neuroscience, the brain can flex and the brain can grow
You could
and
have.
you can develop that. And so we actually see that in the books that you're actually flexing your
Mhm.
mental muscle to grow it as you practice.
You could have pulled a Peter Jackson and stolen a line from way later to make your strong female characters actually strong female characters. And in the training, you could have actually had them fighting, and Egwene throws a weave at woman who should be Amish, and she just goes whoop and knocks it away. How'd you do that? You didn't even channel. It's just a weave.
Yeah, you could have.
You
Yeah, you could have done that.
you
Now
you.
you would have taken that away from Perrin, but I don't think they're going to give it to Perrin later, so
I
that
don't
would have
think
been
we're gonna
fine.
get there because
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna get a season 4. But moving
there are
on,
already rumor buzzes that there's not.
um, the next scene, this is another one of those in a vacuum. I like this. The problem is this isn't in a vacuum. The scene where Rand and Moraine are sitting there talking.
Oh, see, this is the scene I hated, so we're going to disagree again, I think.
Well, this actually is a pretty good portrayal of who Rand is, I would say, in book 5.
Hmm.
The problem is you have shown us none of that in the
Well,
series.
and they ungender the power again.
No, this is the point where they regender it. Well, they regender it and they ungender it in the
No,
same damn
no,
scene.
because she's saying to him that
Yes.
I can't control it in the way that I control the one
Yes.
power normally, and he's saying, well, you just got to do this.
Yes.
So I think this was a point where they ungendered it.
Well, the I in all caps have WTF, Sidon and Sidar are here all of a sudden because they actually use the words, and I'm pretty sure this is literally the first time in the entire series they have said that they have actually acknowledged that it's not just
No, because
the
there was
one
an
power.
episode earlier in this season where she says, she kind of throws the line out there, I can teach you to fly just like a fish can, teach a bird to swim or something like that. Whatever the line was. It was like in the
Well, they
first
they
three
tried to,
episodes.
but I remember
Yeah,
us
they just kind
mentioning
of
that
tossed it in
they
there.
could have used that,
Yeah.
one of those lines, but it's like they half did it, but then butchered it, but there wasn't
Hmm.
any point to it. I think they may have, I think they may have used the term sidear before, but I don't know that they've actually used the term side-in. I don't know if they even have, because in rewatching season 1, when Leandrin confronts the random guy who I initially thought was what's his face, but it's not. Uh, it's just some dude who can channel. Uh, she just says the power's not for men, and so they they gender it and then they ungender it, to your point, by them talking of, just do it like I do it. That's
Mm-hmm.
not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
No, that's not how it works.
So this scene is a great example, and the reason I say it's good in a vacuum, just to your point earlier about the chemistry between Fail and Perrin in their scene, or in their scenes, the chemistry here between Stradowski and Pike is good. It is a well shot scene. The problem is they have done so much damage to their world building in the first two seasons that this overcorrection is jarring and it can't work. So the besides the gendering issue here with the power, the other problem they have in this scene with the power, you have not shown us because you were so busy having your girl boss moments. Remember, Rand gets bitch slapped by Sawan in season 2
Mm-hmm.
and has to be saved by Moraine. Not once have you shown us, holy crap. Nynaeve has that huge moment where, oh, maybe she's the Dragon Reborn because she's so powerful, which was stupid, but I digress.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had a moment like that with Rand. So why is Moraine asking him how to handle this huge amount of power? Because what they're implying there is that Rand is so much, which is kind of true, is so ludicrously powerful that in his raw natural state, he can almost match someone wielding a song real,
Mm-hmm.
which is true. A moderate power user with a song real is what it would take to match Rand naturally,
Mm-hmm.
because he is that powerful. Well, I know that because I've read the books. You haven't shown us any of that.
Mm.
And so that is
Don't
the
worry,
other
there
reason
will
this
be a
scene falls
Google
flat.
article about it later.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there's going to be a moment. There's a similar moment later at the end that reinforces this point. But let's move on because we go back to the two rivers and we get Fail giving some of her
Which is
backstory.
funny because the mixed feelings about this scene are kind of overlap with what we already talked about and make me even more frustrated because her acting in this scene I thought was pretty good.
Mm,
The story she was telling, I wanted to throw something at the television.
mm, yeah, yeah. So, um, you so I just ranted about how they did so much damage with their world building previously, and now you're doing it again. Because what this is really powerful. This is really emotional. This is really going to hit the audience good. No, because what you've done here,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about changing Fail's backstory and her mother being such an important part of her life and of the story later. So, oh, you made her a dark friend. So I'm mad. No, no, no. That's not. I'm not mad that you made her a dark friend because it of the change to the canon. The problem is by doing that and having Fail decide the proper course of action is to run away, you have completely undermined not only Fail but the entire Borderlander culture.
Mm-hmm.
They do not suffer dark friends, period, because they can't. And they gave you a little bit of that when you went to Shinar in the last couple of episodes of the first season. They hinted at how militaristic, necessarily militaristic, the Borderlanders were, because the Blight is right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And
have completely undermined that.
yeah, and with no acknowledgement of, oh, I told my dad or anything. So now we can't have Davram Bashir
Mm-hmm,
as the general for Randall
mm-hmm,
Thor because he's compromised. And we know he's compromised by the person who's actually one of the most pure in motive people in the books, which was Davram's wife. This is equivalent to making Abel the drunken abuser.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
still, where the fuck is Abel?
That's a good question. I'm wondering,
Because we also don't
since
see Tam in the Two Rivers.
they killed off Natty, I was expecting that he would come back, or we had speculated and hoped that after what happened with Natty Cawthon and the White Cloaks, that, oh well, maybe they'll redeem Abel because of this,
Yeah,
and
he
we still don't
sobers
see
up or
him.
whatever. Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
just
where is he? Where is Matt? Where is Tam? We have yet to see them, but we got Marin. Bran is nowhere to be found. That, like I ranted about in one of the earlier episodes, is Marin the mayor? Apparently she is.
that's okay. Bran was
Um,
a skinny innkeeper, so he couldn't be trusted anyways.
yeah. Uh, White cloak scene, I don't care. Uh, and then we go back to Tanchico, and this was the scene we referenced earlier with Tom and the knife pulling and the
Well, before that, no, there was a huge scene. Was the girls coming in and healing Alana?
that's later.
That's the next thing I have before we have Tanchico again.
No, well, you've gotten mixed up
Okay.
because this is so.
Well, I write these as I'm watching them. So do we go to Tanchico, back to the Two Rivers, back to Tanchico?
Yeah, we do more Tanchico later.
Okay.
But this is the knife scene we talked about earlier, and she gets up and she sings.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
and it is,
I mean, she's actually quite good as far
she's quite good.
as the show scene goes. I mean, you sometimes I'm okay with throwing in a show scene. That's fine. You know, it's
And at least the song sounds like it could be in this world.
I
The
think it's
song
from the
from,
source material.
yeah, the song Tom sings from season one is that is why I snarkily said someone got drunk and cosplayed Red Dead, and wandered onto the wrong scene. But this one actually sounds like it could belong in this
Uh,
world,
yeah, I'll
and
need to
it
look it
sounds
up
like
before
a
the
Body
next
Tavern
episode,
song.
but I'm pretty sure this is actually a song Tom sings in the books.
It may be referenced, and uh, I snarkily mentioned to my wife that this was the best part of the scene because the hills of Tanchico, the hills are a metaphor. Um,
Well, because all the women are doing this. I mean, they didn't like
yeah,
hide it.
yeah, it's like, oh, very subtle, guys, very subtle.
Yeah.
Good job. Um, but then we get more contrivances because, oh, here's an old, we switch back to Min and Nynaeve, and just some random old guy overhears them. And oh, Ipsand just also happens to be in that same tavern and sees Nynaeve there. Again, how many contrivances do we need here?
Hmm.
Uh and
Again,
then
in a small world, they're making it look like that would
mhm,
be totally fitting because you could only go so many places. You would need to disguise yourself to not
yep,
be,
yep.
but at the same time, Tenchiko would be
And why is Ibsen in this
the only thing is I
low
would say in the first
dive bar?
two seasons, you should have made it more clear that the pattern pushes things in the right direction
Yeah,
or in the
yeah,
direction it needs to
yeah.
go.
That would be
Yeah.
one way to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then Leandrin kills Naomi and says, "I'm going to be a Forsaken." And
Way to get rid of your minority representation there.
okay, and then
Make Peter Dinklage happy.
we go back to the Two Rivers, and the Cawthon girls just show up, and
Yep. My note here is so
jeez,
does healing not need talent anymore or just
yeah,
the power
yeah.
itself? Yeah.
So this goes back to the undermining of Rand's power as well. Is you have so cheapened the magic of this world that it's not magical. There's no
I would use
wonder.
another word, the skill.
Mm,
The skill because the magic is there. You have the power latently. We even in the books they talk about it. It will
yeah,
kill you if you don't learn how to use it. It is there, but you have to have the skill to use it.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, but to me, that's part of the magical nature. The wonder of it is, oh, it can do these incredible things, but it's not easy. No, you just two girls can come in who've never done it before. They just hold hands, and Alana talks them through it.
Yeah. That would be like two young girls that know how to sew coming in and being like, here's how you stitch a wound. It just, yeah, it's not the same.
It would, yeah, it
Oh, you
is.
happen to have a needle and thread? You can do this too.
Here, let me talk to you over the phone how you do a emergency tracheotomy. What? I don't think so. It ain't like the movie, son. Um, yeah, and again, another contrivance of, oh, here are just two girls who happen to be able to channel, and I can just talk them through it so that we can move on with the plot.
Hmm.
Awesome. Good job,
Yeah, yeah.
guys.
They didn't need an anatomy book to know, that the arrow had pierced a lung and it's probably collapsed, and you got to mend that, blow it up,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things.
Mm-hmm. Um,
Which is actually something they didn't do well in the books either, because anatomy is complicated. And if someone comes in with an arrow through their lung, you would actually need to understand that instead of just forming weaves to put everything back together. But
well, Jordan kind of hand waves it with the idea that the healing weave heals everything.
which is not a
So,
good thing. That would be like a tumor.
well, but
That'd be
it's
like throwing
also
testosterone at a cancer. Yeah.
the we. Uh, no, the point is that the weave is smarter than the person wielding it. So even though the even as someone as smart as the yellow might not know the anatomy, certainly the
See,
biochemistry.
the way I read it, and if this is the great thing about fiction is we can read it differently, is the yellows actually understood the anatomy better. What like just like when we talk about stuff like that, you say it's witchcraft, but I
Mhm.
understand it better. And if I had the power to weave something, I would know the ins and outs of what I'm weaving. Where Nynaeve, being trained as a wisdom, actually helped her with the fact that she could heal people
That's
because she.
also why she comes up with weaves later, and also same thing with the kin who work as
Mhm.
healers. Is Jordan makes a point in the latter half of the series that these healers are able to heal a particular ailment, but the
Mhm.
Aes Sedai, when they heal you, it heals all your wounds, not just the serious ones. So that becomes a big deal later because it's less energy for both the healer and the
Mhm.
healed.
Well, for the supernatural part of it that I gathered was the weave itself acted like your MRI and your
Mm-mm.
X-rays and everything. It,
Yes.
it gave you insight into the thing, and you still guided it to do what you wanted it to do.
Yeah. Um.
But back to the show, where in
I
Tanchico
don't
with
wanna.
Tom, in Tom, I say they definitely bail dome in it through
No,
Tom.
no, no, no. Hold on. We can't go back to Tanchico yet
Oh no.
because
Oh, okay.
first we get the canoodling, and this scene almost could have been good. But again, kudos to Isabella for being such a good actress that when Perrin shows her the picture of Matt with the horn, and she gets, you could have told me this before. I've been going on and on about the horn and it's already been found and blown. That was pretty good. Then she crawls on his lap and they start getting busy. Okay, got a lot of problems here.
Hmm.
First of all, let's just within the scene, Alana and Maxim come down and they're trying to ape the actual scene from the books when they fall down the stairs and they end up on, she ends up on top of him. Except there's no humor there
Hmm.
because there's no setup there, and because the way you've set up Alana and Maxim, the most likely line was, "Hey, you want us to join in?
Or either you want us to come back later,
Yeah, you
that,
want us to
yeah,
come back
yeah,
later?"
at minimum. No, no, and this is the irony of the message and modern audience writing is you played right into Andrew Tate right there. He shows the shiny thing and she jumps on his lap.
But it gets worse than that because this is, again, back to the damage you did from the beginning. And this is why I ranted about this so much of one, why the hell did you give him a wife? And two, why did you have him kill her in the first freaking episode? He is as low as he can get. He can't get any lower. But also, how are you going to do the redemptive arc? So I asked the females of the house, I said, let me set this up for you. You have, if you are reading or watching a bit of fiction and you have a male character whose wife died because he accidentally killed her, and we don't exactly know, but I said, I think it's been less than a year, right?
We've got one 3 months later. We've got the travel back from Falm, which they
Mm-hmm.
imply is a few
Is
months.
a few months, but
Yeah.
at most a year. And he's hooking up with some girl he barely knows that they do a terrible, like with the whole show, they do a terrible time of showing the passage of time and scale in general of distance and time. It seems like it's been maybe a week, maybe a few weeks, but really the point is not a lot of time. As a female, would you find this compelling romance? No, no, none of them approved of this.
Which is where book three would have come in because even with the I killed my wife thing in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, we would have had them in a separate place, separate situation, having spent nights together in very secular ways for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't be at home where he'd be reminded of the thing, having just told her the story about how he killed his wife. So you would have been in a different situation, different place, and you were guys, pretty girl, PP go up, that's just the way it is. So it would have been more believable. But having this scene following the fact that he just told her about killing his own
Mm-hmm.
wife, and
And because this is where my note was about me being overly optimistic that we would get the Dragon Reborn blacksmithing scene. Instead of that, the only emotionally connective scene that they had was at the graves, his family graves. So,
that was Alana there.
oh God, you're right. Because
Yeah.
that I ranted that should have been Fail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, you're right, you're right, you're right, right. So I take that all back. They haven't had any scene until this episode.
The one right before it where she gives the stupid story about her mother. That
No, no,
was
yes,
yeah, yeah.
but all of the connection between these two characters has happened in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
You have had five other episodes. There's only eight. We are 5/8 of the way through the series, and we have not had any connection with these two people. And now all of a sudden in episode 6, boom, let's get busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is something from kind of sexy time with Sam talk is you could have played this because these kind of, really fast, explosive initial relationships do happen, but they never set it up.
Mm-hmm.
Where you could have had that initial attraction right away in the scene where she's like, I'm Mandarb, and he chides back that, oh, I know a guy that named his horse Mandarb.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, I'm Fail. And then you could have had a scene that went with that, or a moment that went with that, with where she expresses the fact that for some reason, I'm extremely attracted to you, or something, because I mean that happens in real life. You
Yeah.
can go to Washington Avenue here in Houston, and probably by the end of the night, if you're semi-attractive and competent, you're going to have a woman tell you something like that. And it's just like, oh, I feel like I've known you all my life, And when you hear that, by the way, run. But yeah, you could have had that moment if these people actually understood what it was like to go out and date and do these things. But no, they're feminist writers in a room where they got all their education from school, which tells you all that is bad.
Yeah. Um, then we go back to Tanchico and we get more contrivances of, hey, I heard you were looking for a thing. Here's the other bracer.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
a,
yeah, no, and I paused it in the scene where he's first talking to that guy, and the guy is labeled as Matt Admirer.
oh geez.
And I was like, I didn't get that from the scene until I watched it after having seen it. And I'm like, oh God, why does everybody have to be in love with everybody?
Yeah. No, yeah, I forget because that connects back to the earlier scene where he was asking about jewelry,
Mm-hmm.
and there was the person who's like, "Is this for a man or a woman?" And so there was yeah, they have to make everything gay. Um, but then we actually get a pretty decent scene, which, as dumb as the Malkidian scene was earlier of what are you doing and why is this here? The other reason of why is this here and why are you spending screen time on this is because you didn't need it, because the next scene where Malkidian confronts Ibsen and kills her is actually pretty darn good. And kudos to Laia Costa is the actress's name. She's really creepy.
Oh, as Bohemian? Yeah.
Yeah, she's really creepy. Um, Unfortunately, the scene is kind of, again, they wanted their Game of Thrones and they keep trying to copy, but it is the dollar store, Timu or Wish order that's like, what the hell is this? This isn't what I ordered.
I saw a
Um,
meme the other day. It said Timo factory burns down in China, costing everybody $59.
um, so they do that here in the scene because when she kills Ispen, she shoves her thumbs into her cheeks. And I was like, okay, you're clearly copying the scene that everyone was talking about in, was
Oh,
that
yeah,
the
yeah.
end of season 4, I think it was, or 3 of Game of Thrones,
Yeah, when the mountain blows up
just
the
literally
the
crushes
the cobra or whatever they call them.
Pedro
It's yeah.
Pascal's head
Yeah,
with his
yeah,
bare hands.
yeah.
Except that scene, I had to look away because they were not shy about that. Well, they were trying to do it, but they're also trying to keep, to your point, their TV-14 rating here.
Except in the very opening scene with Leandra, they show her stomping the dude's head.
Yes,
And they
that
show it with
they get that one a little
obviously
graphic.
a
Mhm,
watermelon they used to
mhm.
explode it, you know.
So she doesn't actually put her thumbs into her eyes. And what would have actually made more sense and been more terrifying would be if she like put her fingers into her whole head, like shoved her fingers into her brain.
Yeah.
Because first of all you did was shove your fingers into her cheeks and she dies?
Did they were there weaves around it? I forgot.
No,
No, there
no,
weren't
because
weaves.
this is in the dream. So you're
Uh
showing off the power of the dream, which is good, except you're doing it terribly. So again, you almost had a good scene, but then you ruin it. I will say though, the next scene is the compulsion scene where Malkidian goes to
mm.
Nynaeve and Elaine, and that one was actually good.
See, I thought
Uh,
it was a little overacted.
the only point I thought was a little too much, because I thought they played this well to the way the scene is written in the book,
Mhm.
which
Oh
is
no, no, no. Yeah, yeah. Nuts and bolts it was there, but I thought it was a little overacted.
they're
Yeah.
especially from Elaine, she's just not quite as good as Nynaeve and Malkidian, the actress. So she's a little over the top, but in the scene in the book, they are eager to please Malkidian, and I thought they did a good job of portraying that. I liked that Nynaeve, they actually set up Nynaeve's strong will here because she is resisting giving Malgidian the bracer.
Hmm.
That I did think was too much. It was like, okay, good. She's resisting. Why does it go on for so long? And why is it? I thought that was too over the top. But for the most part, the scene was actually pretty good. The problem is it just kind of ends and it's like you needed something more than just what the heck happened? Where'd the bracer go? Did we drink too much? I'm confused. It just kind of ends.
Hmm.
I don't think they knew how to wrap it up because again, your characters are only as clever as your author.
Well, we had an author, the writer, the showrunner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
My next note is with Egwene confronting Rand.
Yep.
Okay. I the only thing I said about it was they had to make it too teen simple.
That was my exact note, was that it is contrived and as stupid as the episode season one, episode 17 angst fight that they all have together in Shinar.
You know, the
Um,
running meme is always still a better love story than Twilight.
yeah.
And I think after this series going through these for, three seasons is Twilight was a better love story than Egwene and Rand.
Hmm. Um, yeah, because in this scene there is there's a line where Rand says, um, "I'm sorry," and Egwene says, "Sorry for what exactly?" And my note was, "Good damn question." It's back to what I predicted at the beginning of
Yeah, yeah.
the season is he's going to get in trouble for something she dreamed. Now, to the writer's credit, they did point out that okay, it wasn't just a dream, it was more than a dream, and what they
Yeah.
didn't do a good job of was showing that Rand knew that it was more than just a dream.
Well, but that's the thing. Did he? Because Lanfear was in his dream. So it would have been like a regular dream to him.
Hmm.
It would not have been walking in the world of dreams because
Hmm.
Egwene, uh, they called this kind of evil was going into everybody's dreams in that episode.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
was she was intruding. I mean, that's like uh, that's a peeping Tom. She was looking in on what everybody was dreaming, and thankfully for everybody, it was something benign like Perrin in the blacksmithing shop and Matt trying to give his mom and daughters something nice,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff until you got to Rand. But yeah, she was a peeping Tom. She was the one in the wrong there. Lanfear was
Hmm.
also in the wrong. Rand was the only innocent person in that whole series.
The other problem with this scene of why it's so contrived and stupid and oh, we just need to have a fight here because we have to have them break up is Rand actually has a good line that is true and it makes sense both in this world and in the source material, which is I'm paraphrasing here, but you haven't given me a second thought. That's what you do, which is kind of true in this season because she's been spending time training with the wise ones, but you haven't shown us that. You haven't shown us the passage of time. You haven't shown us their relationship fraying. That was my rant at the very beginning of the season is or even the end of season 2 is how are you going to break these two up and have Rand get with who he's supposed to get with, or are you even going to bother?
Well, I would say it's even worse than that because they had shown them breaking up
Uh-huh.
and then they showed them as if nothing ever happened. There was
Exactly.
there was no makeup, there was nothing. It was just as if they were back to where they were in
The,
episode 1.
all this is a redux of their fight at the beginning of the series with I'm going to apprentice to Nynaeve and wisdoms don't get married. And
Hmm.
Rand was upset you chose that over us. And he was right to be upset, but she was also right of look, this is my calling, this is my destiny, this is what I want to do with my life. But then you reset everything at the end of season 2 and you built it, you made it even stronger in at the beginning of season 3. So now you have no subsequent building. You have not
Hmm.
built to this argument at all. You just needed and wanted to have the drama in the moment.
Well, not only that, you confuse it by trying to have Perrin in the mix at the end of season 1.
Well, and then you make it worse because uh when he points out that basically yeah, he's mad because you haven't given me a second thought, but then he says basically something to the effect of you're very driven and I'll always respect that about you. And my comment was because every man in this show is a simp. It's like even within this scene, you
Except for
can't make it
Robin,
make sense, except for
as it
Robin.
should be if he was 6'8". Yeah.
Um, And then you get the climax, which is this fight where all of a sudden Samael shows up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, all right. Well, we got
They're
a lot of
throwing in
problems
some
with
book
this.
five there. It's what they're doing.
Yeah,
Oh no, no, didn't they get attacked as they were a caravan in book four? Or was that book five?
that was book five when they're headed to Karheen.
Yeah, headed to Karheen. Yeah. And they get
Yeah,
attacked in the middle of the night. That's when Melindra attacks Matt, right, in the books, which not a spoiler alert for the show because it can't happen because they're on opposite sides of the world right now.
yeah, yeah.
But
At
yeah,
the
yeah,
at the end of book five, when Matt reveals they're going after Ravine in Andor, and the plan was supposed to be to bait him into going after Samael, and that's why Melindra tries to kill him with a
mhm.
dagger with the 9 Bs of Ilion. Um,
Oh no, no, I did mix up because no, there was a time where they were just traveling and Trollocs attacked.
yeah, that was in book four when they're traveling
Yeah.
back from Ruhedin to Cold Rock's Hold.
Yes. Okay. So that's where we're at technically because I think
Mhm.
this, I think the last episode is called Cold Rock's Hold.
And then they are attacked in Cold Rock's Hold by Drakkar and
Hmm.
Trollocs. They're attacked again. And I was expecting the Drakkar to finally show up because Lanfear in that scene, that terrible scene with Moraine says, "I'm sending someone after him. Don't interfere."
Yeah. Well, and in the books, that attack before they get to Cold Rock's Hold, or I mean, the bowl, whatever it is called.
The yeah, Al Caradero, the Golden Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, the Golden Bowl. When they're on their way to that and they get attacked, I think this is what this is supposed to represent. But Lanfear accuses Samael, but you never actually know who it was. And there's a good chance that it was actually Asmodean. Because remember at the end of book
Because
four,
he's trying to slow him
he's the
down. Yeah.
antagonist. And yeah, we never actually know if it was Samael or not. But here they actually just show him. They just show him.
Not only
Which
did they show him, but did they kill him? Did they already kill off Samuel? Because it's a little
no, he
ambiguous
backed
at
through
the
a
end.
gateway.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah, he
I thought,
backed through a gateway. I'm about to watch the rest of it again after we're done, but because like it was so not memorable, but I'm pretty sure he backed through a gateway at the last minute of something.
but back to my rant about Rand's power is you have not had any build up here to show us that Rand can hold his own against a freaking Forsaken
Well, but what they also combined here, though, was with the way that ended,
with
was
the
we
girl.
do know Samael is the one who attacked the Stone of Tyr
Hmm.
at the end of book or the beginning of book four,
Hmm.
after you know the book we skipped happened. So I think they combined those two scenes, and we do know it's Samael and Tyr, and that's when Rand does the big baddie thing that he shouldn't have known how to do, but we're starting to see Luce there and start to come through a little bit in his psyche, and then he tries to heal the girl, which actually made more sense of all the stupid scenes with gave me flashbacks of young Anakin in the prequels with the girl who can't act and her fake looking spear and all of that because you were trying to make a connection where he would actually be that emotional about it when realistically in the books he was that emotional about it because she was a child. It was a person he had never met in the books, but he
Hmm.
sees a child and jumps down and tries to do the thing. And I think I don't you know quit trying to lead your audience. We would have all got it
Hmm.
because children are sacred
Hmm.
in the world, and it's just we all get that emotional thing. It would have worked no matter what, and you could have saved yourself some stupid scenes, which
Yeah.
cost screen time,
Yep.
which could have been
So
used for good setup.
it at least it made those terrible scenes make sense of, oh, that's why they were doing that. Besides just they're trying to show Rand's softer side, they were also trying to
Well,
set this up.
I hope the next episode begins with the list, and she's the first name on the list.
I don't think they're smart enough to do that because I don't
If
think
they do that, I will give them a little credit. Okay.
I will too, because as I've been ranting about, I don't think they're smart enough to get the importance of the list. I really don't. Okay,
Okay.
they read the list. I don't think they realize how important it is to Rand's character.
I think if they would drop their bias, they would be smart enough to get it. I mean, they're
Uh,
midwits. They're somewhere slightly above 100 IQ. They could get it if they wanted to, but the list was because he was harming women.
that
It,
is the going to be the problem, is the
yeah.
cognitive dissonance of, even if you get it, can you get past your warped worldview that will allow you to put it
Mhm.
in? Because, oh, and we can't do that. That's
Yeah,
gender bias. That's
because
problematic.
you would have to be admitting that Rand has a spot in his heart where he has to protect women.
Mm-hmm. Before we even get to that, though, there's when he calls down the lightning on Samael, and I don't know if there are any of those Dark Friend Aiel left. Uh, on the one hand, it was good. Again, this scene in a vacuum. Rand gets angry because there's Egwene and Avienda lying on the ground, for all he knows, dead. He gets mad and he channels a ton of power and effortlessly calls down a bunch of lightning that levels a building. All right. Except, what happened at the very end of season one? Four completely untrained
Mm.
women linked and wiped out an entire Trolloc army with lightning.
Yeah, except
Rand's not special.
except that they burned out in the process and almost
True.
died, and one of them was Nynaeve.
Yes. Yeah. I rewatched that scene and I still don't know exactly what was supposed to have happened there. If,
No, the power wielded in that scene wasn't my problem with it. It was the untrained
mm-hmm.
accepted that made the circle, and the fact that Egwene just happened to heal Nynaeve. Those were my two problems with the actual power wielded was believable with four
Yes.
relatively strong wielders of the power, including Nynaeve and Egwene, who were two of the strongest
Well,
to have shown
those
up
two,
for.
but then
Yeah.
the other two, we don't know about this random fourth person, but Agobar's sister, it is said, was turned away because she wasn't strong enough to even reach accepted, I think.
Yeah, but
It,
she was just the one guiding. She wasn't the
yeah.
power behind it, which
The,
is why she burned out.
the other problem, well, what you're not supposed to be able to do in a circle, but anyway, even rewatching that, I'm still not sure if Nynaeve died or got burnt out or was just almost dead and Egwene healed her. It's not clear.
No, yeah, it's not clear, and it actually looked more like she was burnt out and
But
Egwene healed her,
the
which would have been Nynaeve's story arc.
the
But then
bigger
we got no
point,
follow up, like, oh, I just healed this thing that no one's ever healed before
the
because
the
I wanted to.
the bigger point here, though, is again back to they're captured by their own worldview. They had to have this girl power moment of these untrained four,
Hmm.
you know, three untrained, one barely trained, and they stop this entire army. No, the reason that scene in the book is the way it is to show you how powerful Rand is, even if he doesn't know exactly how he's doing what he's
Hmm.
doing.
Well, and again, it's one of those metaphysical moments because you're so close to Shao Ghul at the time that he was able to, just like in the skies over Falm, affect the world around him by what he was doing. And he basically uh Agomar was the Falm king. What Agenor? Okay, I kept in my mind mixing up Agomar and Agenor,
Mm,
where he basically cuts Agenor off from the source through just sheer power.
mhm,
I mean, he's basically Conan, which no surprise that Robert Jordan wrote a lot of the Conan series.
mhm,
He was Conan when he was just done pushing the mill around and being abused by his people and then coming out and saying, I am done with this. Yeah, he had no skill. He had no anything but his sheer power. And that's what he did to Agenor because Agenor was surprised by it. And then we spend 14 books of him honing that power,
mhm.
where we didn't get that because we'd had the girls having the boss moment,
Yep.
where we could have had a metaphysical moment where he does the thing that they randomly did. That was the worst ending in any series, by the way, where oh, I can see the light and boom, I blew you away, Ferris. And oh, Moraine Steele. Oh, what happened there? I don't know. And then we get to hear, which if you would take it to the beginning of book four in the series, we had that moment again because he didn't know what he was doing. and he called down the lightning on all the shadow spawn in the Stone of Tyr.
Hmm.
And it was impactful because now we're actually starting to get a new layer where he's got a voice in his head. And they didn't do anything with that either. When are we going to get the voice in his head? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they cast Lews Therin, so are they actually going to use him to ADR in
Mm-hmm.
some voice work? Um, I'm watching the scene right now, and they have a close up of what looks like Samael under the rocks, but then he disappears. They don't show him again as Rand moves the rocks away to reveal the girl. And initially I thought, oh wow, are they actually going to do a good here of what I've been ranting about of do what Peter Jackson did and you take scenes and lines from other
So this is
places.
Leah and Samael in Shadow
Yes.
Logoth, where Samael kind of dies, but you don't know he dies, but Leah's
Yes.
there. Yeah.
But it they they sort of did the scene from the beginning uh of Shadow Rising in the stone, but they either didn't have enough budget or enough balls because you can't what is happening to the girl is not the way Jordan describes it. It's not as graphic, it's not as
Mm-hmm.
noticeable. He essentially turns her into a meat puppet in trying to make her live.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get that in this scene. Um the only good I can really say about this scene is that they accidentally had setup and payoff because we were grumbling in the first 5 episodes of what is the point of this little girl and these scenes. And well, it's the setup to this. Okay, Rand is going crazy, and Stradowski does a good job of blending distressed with manic.
Mm-hmm.
It, I'm curious to see how the last couple of episodes go and how they have him act and what he does. But there's just so much cheesy cheap effects that you can't actually see the actress, the girl, and what's happening to her. So it doesn't have the same impact. Um, and again, kudos because we've criticized him before, but Stradowski's face, he does a good job acting there.
No, he's a bright spot in the
The
series.
problem
Yeah.
is you don't get the feel of it because the setups with the girl, those scenes were so cheesy and pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they do. There is a brief scene where they that where Moraine looks over and you see what looks like an Aiel and that mace, that big two-handed maul type thing that Samuel was wielding, and I don't think you see him. So he might not be dead, or they might try to be trying to leave it ambiguous, like
Mm-hmm.
in Crown of Swords, like in the books of wait, is Samuel dead? Is he
Yeah.
not? What's going on here?
Knowing what they tried to do with combining the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
if they do not open the next episode with Rand going through the list, then I'm going to be completely disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be the opening scene to the next one because, like you said earlier, the Wayne breakup, the scenes with Lanfear, this has to be part of his downturn into basically nihilism, and the list is the biggest part of that in the books.
Yeah.
The list is the thing that haunts him and causes him to go down this cascade of I need to be hard, I need to do this, I need to do that. I'm going to die anyways. Why do I even justify this?
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't open with that, then they drop the ball big time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see where it opens next week and complain about it because it will probably be crap. Even if they do it, I'll be curious to see how well they pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm also curious
Well,
what
Stradowski's
they're
a good
gonna
enough
do.
actor. You could just have a scene that starts dark and kind of pans out to him sitting
Mm,
alone, and just kind of, half crying. And he names the girl. I can't remember her name. He names the girl. He
Mhm.
names the other one that was under the rubble, and just like, and just you make even an offhand comment of, I was trying to protect them and I couldn't, something along those lines.
Mhm.
And then Moiraine walking in and him kind of like coming out of his daze. That would be a good opening scene, or even better, Lan walking in and coming out of the daze. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see next week. On the plus side, we're almost done. So 2 more episodes. Oy.
Two more episodes. And then we got to figure out something else to bitch about. Uh,
Well, we could go back to the Forsaken and talk about the individual Forsaken because
yeah,
that's what we were
Asmodean's next,
doing.
right?
We could do him or we could do Mog Gideon because she actually is important in the series here. So we could talk about
Well,
her and who
I
she
think I
really
think with
is.
those they're not as in depth as Lanfear and Ishi, so we could probably do those in a dual episode
Yeah.
because they are the weakest of the male and female side too. So we could start there and work up.
Well, and there are some interesting parallels between the two of them as they
Hmm.
both get captured. Yeah. So there's some interesting stuff to talk about there. Um, I'm I'm also going to be curious after the season ends, are there going to be any announcements about season 4?
The
Because with
last I said
Salky
was, is it
gone,
going to be cut? Yeah.
yeah, with Salky gone, there's a lot of speculation about whether even Rings of Power is going to keep going, and that is their flagship show, if you will. That has gotten even more budget and way more budget and press than Wheel of Time did, even though they were supposed to kind of be companion shows. So I'm curious to see because I can't imagine there will be any sort of announcement while they're still releasing episodes because they want people to watch.
Hmm.
So I'll be curious once the 8th episode is done, does anyone say, or are there even any rumors floating around out there?
Yeah, which sucks because there has, I mean, even as many complaints as we've had about this episode and the first three, it was an upswing. This season has been an upswing from the first two seasons.
Hmm.
It definitely an improvement. And so if they could, I don't know how you fix every wrong that has been done. Personally, I would rather a redo, by another production company.
Oh yeah.
But that's going to be expensive because the rights are expensive and
Yep.
all of these things. But if you could fix it, it still can be done. And if it ends on a good note, I would actually want them to continue
Hmm.
because obviously lessons were learned. Scrap this stupid shit and go to what the fans want. The problem is what I'm looking at when I look at Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and everything. The only people left are the people who liked the stupid shit from one and two
Hmm.
because the
Hmm.
ratings are so high. And the actual complaints I read on the message boards are about, I'm like, are things that are more book accurate they're complaining about. So I have a feeling that other than us who are doing this for a podcast purpose, we probably would have dropped out too or probably after the second episode of
Yeah.
season one.
Well, I
Um,
mentioned a lot of the people I watch, like, Nerderotic, Shadversity. I don't remember who else in that group had talked about Wheel of Time, and they're all checked out. They're like, yeah, I don't care. We're watching and talking about other things. This is pointless. Nobody's watching it. Nobody cares. So I'm not even gonna
mhm.
make videos on it.
Yeah, but what we also know from behavioral psychology is reward good behavior. Reward good behavior makes change. And if they're
Hmm.
going in the trend of we're trying to get things back on track for the real fans, how do we reward that without rewarding what they already did?
Hmm.
And that's the conundrum because we want them to do right by the source material, but at the same time, a redo would be best. But I would love to have Natasha O'Keefe, Ferris, Stradowski. Who else has been good? Leandrin, what's her name?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah,
I'm blanking on her.
Leandrin. The girl who plays Mughedian. You just had her name just a second ago. Uh, you would love to have them involved with it And as we're hopefully going to have a little bit of data here on the directors that did a good job too, you would want them to be involved with it, but you can't do that if you scrap it.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
start all over again.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I have long held that the Wheel of Time makes much more sense as an animated series if you're going to adapt it to live action because so many of the things in it are so hard to do live action. The big one being the ageless face, because they completely ignored that, because how do you even do that? You
Mm-hmm.
know, how do you even do that with a real person, short of the weird uncanny valley de-aging,
Well,
which is
that's the whole point of
expensive.
the ageless face is it should be uncanny valley. That's what cues
That's
you in.
actually that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but also we talk about the world of dreams. We have precedent. What dreams may come. Robin Williams and Cuba
Mm,
Gooding Jr. That would have been a fantastic world of dreams setup where you do
yeah.
it as art. It's Monet. It's all, it's Salvador Dali in some cases, right?
Yeah.
You could have done it in that way and it would have been just fine. And that was what, 20 years ago?
That is a good point, that because we've been ranting about the um the characters in the world of dreams, but the world of dreams themselves, there
There's
is
no distinction when you're in
there's
the
no
dream
distinction.
and when you're in the
Yeah.
world of dreams.
Also no distinction between when you're in your dream or Teleron Riyadh.
That's what I was saying with that statement. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
no, see, I meant um between Teleron Riyadh and the real world,
Mm,
because they can be confusing, but Jordan gives you plenty of clues that it is different,
hmm.
and we don't get that.
In fact, when I first watched What Dreams May Come, which is a fantastic movie, having had read a lot of Jordan before watching it,
Mm.
that's what I was like, oh, this is like the world of dreams
Uh,
because where everything is kind of moving around and kind of just out of sight as you're going through, but the general picture is there.
yeah,
That's what I got out of it. And I was like, I wonder if the person who made this was a fan of that book series because that's
interesting
exactly how
thought.
I
Yeah.
envisioned the world of dreams.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens when it happens, and we will talk to y'all Wednesday about who knows what. Maybe when grumpy old men will complain about girls some more. Who knows?
Yeah, and also in addition to the keep analyzing Forsaken or over analyzing things from the books, characters from the book, because we probably need to do a Matt and Perrin episode at some point too,
Yeah.
specifically to them. Uh, what other fiction should we be diving into, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, if there's something you've really, as people who watch the show, have overanalyze yourself and you want us to read or watch and go into, that would be, I mean I'm always open to recommendations because I'm tired of the algorithm telling me I should watch this, but it's based on who paid the person who made the algorithm most. So yeah, give me something to
Yeah.
watch. We in the summer we're gonna go over Dostoevsky a little bit more because that's my homework, right?
Hmm.
And anything else, ISO, Scott, all our new fans. I can't remember the name of the person you read earlier. Uh,
Carla, thank you again for
Carla.
commenting, and hope you're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
watching
Thank you for
along.
commenting. Hopefully you're still watching. I mean, keep commenting, give us more things to go because uh yeah, the algorithm sucks. I would rather have your recommendation.
All right. See y'all next time.
Later.